bring in now Sky News political reporter Tom Connell and Sky News business editor Ross Greenwood. I've also still got Bronwyn Bishop, Basil Zemplis and Pauline Hanson all coming up. Ross, great to see you. What were your main takeouts from Dutton's speech?
Oh, there's no doubt the energy piece was the biggest one there, because that's the one that can have the most significant impact on the prices that Australians pay. Energy prices have gone through the roof. When you've got government having to step in to basically underwrite the price that energy costs people, you know that there's something wrong with the system. And yet, despite the fact that Australians know we have plenty of energy, and yet this whole transformation to renewables simply has come at a significant cost to Australians. And that cost is not just in the price that households are paying, but it's actually long-term in the price that Australia pays in terms of business being driven overseas. And so by effectively saying that we are going to direct more gas from Queensland into the local market rather than being exported, there is a conversation that Peter Dutton, as the Prime Minister, would have to have with some of those customers of that gas.
Yep.
But the reality is that many of those customers have been dropping their demand for Australian gas in recent times. So this means there's potentially some sort of gas coming to the system that would power between 2.25 and 4.5 million households. That's how much gas he's calling to go into the local system, to drive down the wholesale price of gas from around $14 per gigajoule down to 10.
And he'd need to work with the states on this as well, presumably. Tom Connell, these two speeches we've heard this week from Jim Chalmers and now Peter Dutton, very different speeches. What stood out for you from Dutton's speech tonight?
I won't go over too much old ground. I do think number one with a bullet was gas. There's a lot to answer over when exactly it starts. Has he spoken to gas companies, for example? And is there maybe a quid pro quo that if they're a bit worse off in the short term, him talking about really speeding up development, if he can get, agreements with the states, as you alluded to, might be the payoff. Places like Narrabri, for example, that could be ready pretty soon if things actually get into train. I'll pick out a couple of things that might be a bit different, Shari. One was public servants. Now, no surprise, 41,000 public servants, he says, will go. He did say Canberra-based. Now, the overall number that are employed here in Canberra is 80,000. So if half of the Canberra-based public servants go, that'd be pretty dramatic. As a now Canberran, it'd actually be 1 in 6 of our overall workers in the city.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying the Coalition cares about seats here, but I wonder if they're not actually all Canberra-based, they're around the country. And the other one I found really interesting was alluding to John Howard. Now, this doesn't surprise me, and I know John Howard is very respected amongst plenty in the electorate, but I do find it interesting in that, of course, the last time John Howard won an election was 2004. So if you think of the age of voters then, you're talking about people that are 40 plus. Now, that's about half the voters in Australia have never voted in an election where John Howard actually won an election. So I think it's not a surprise. He'll be used in the campaign. He's respected. But is he going to perhaps not so much alienate himself with voters, but is he so much a guiding star still in 2025 when many voters would have seen him at the very end of his career? So just a couple of interesting elements to the speech. We do have more detail to come on this. On migration, for example, what's the permanent migration figure going to be, for example, and also defence spending. That's going to be a big one. And an interesting part of that as well, defence, Shari. It's not, people might not think it's a retail issue. This is becoming really big, I understand, in various focus groups. They're saying defence is important to them. They want money spent on it. They're now concerned about their own security as a sort of almost bread and butter issue.
And the other thing that we still are yet to see detail on is, the projections, their total spending, the total deficits and debt that they're forecasting as well. Ross, I want to ask you about what is shaping up to be the biggest debate at the moment, the tax cuts from Albanese and what Peter Dutton has announced just this evening, the petrol price relief, which, if it's an average car, will be around $14 a week. Now, what's your view on how... I genuinely was shocked to find out that they would be opposing the tax cuts and not delivering a more generous package of their own. What do you think about how hard it will be for them to sell this message?
It's interesting. People do not like the amount of tax that governments take out of petrol. There's no doubt about that. And so as a result, that's sending a message that affects everybody, even people who don't pay tax. Remember that pensioners drive cars and don't pay tax. And so from that point of view, it goes more broadly across the community. That's the reason why it's smart policy. The issue there is really it's temporary. So all of this is temporary. What you didn't hear from either the budget and you didn't hear it from Peter Dutton is the strategy to get Australia going again. Now, the energy policy goes partly there, but there is nothing there. And this is where, again, where is the vision? Where is the drive for Australia? What you got out of Peter Dutton there was perhaps a more traditional Australia, values, going to, the education system, going to defence of the country, which are all very basic and important things. But where's the drive to get Australia going again? And that's what I think was really missing from both sides of politics in the budget and reply.
It was good to hear Dutton, though, speak about values tonight and more of a vision for the country, which I think was probably has been missing from the Albanese government in general. All right, Tom Connell, Ross Greenwood, thank you very much for your thoughts on that speech tonight.